This is a special edition of the RTI Press Pass, powered by Rocky Top Insider. Here are your hosts, Rick Butler and Ryan Schumpert.
Tennessee is headed to the Elite Eight after a 78-65 win over rival Kentucky right here in Indianapolis. Tennessee gets revenge after going 0-2 in the regular season to the Wildcats, but in the most important game, in the one that mattered, in the one between these two teams, everything was building to. Tennessee takes the victory. Welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. Rick Butler, Ryan Schumpert. As always, it is about 1:20 in the morning. But we got some Tennessee basketball to talk about. Again, a big win over Kentucky on Friday night, which is now Saturday morning. I mean, Ryan, you were right there for it all on the court, sitting across from Tennessee's bench. What was it like just to sort of watch that team's reaction throughout the game, watch some of the VFLs in attendance, Peyton Manning, Chris Lofton, some of those guys going crazy, because ultimately, not wire to wire, I don't believe, but Tennessee punched Kentucky in the mouth and ran away with the game basically from there.
Yeah, so I saw that some of those Tennessee celebrities were there. I didn't physically see them with my own eyes, though, so no comment on that, I guess. But I mean,
all right, so no RTI TMZ.
No RTI TMZ, though I did see Cole Moore, who was doing photos for us. He did get a photo of Peyton with somebody, one of the boosters. Yeah. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but so maybe a little bit of RTI TMZ. But
we should give a public shout out to our photographer Cole Moore. He's one of the best in the business. Many of our photos, many of them on Instagram, are his work, and I think you can follow him on Instagram. Not sure where.
Cole Moore Photos, I want to say.
I think it is.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, we'll circle back. Okay, go. But what was it like watching that Tennessee reaction throughout the game, as it just sort of kept building to pure jubilation by the time that the final whistle blew?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you just saw a Tennessee team that was laser focused the entire way, and I think never took their foot off the gas. And that's what stood out, being close and watching it. Tennessee took a 26-15 lead with 8:54 to play on a Chaz Lanier and one in transition, got three the old-fashioned way. Tennessee led by double digits the remainder of the game. The final 28-54. You talk about, common. There was a common saying that we heard a lot this week. A common sports saying of it's tough to beat a team three times, which I said I wasn't sure I really completely buy that notion.
In context.
Yeah, I wasn't saying Tennessee couldn't win or anything, but and then another popular phrase is every good team's basketball phrase more than anything. Every good team's going to make a run. You just expected them to make a run, and Kentucky really didn't. I mean, for the first half of the second half, it felt like the game went back and forth from like 13 to 15. Yeah. It didn't feel like Kentucky was able to ever get a 4-0 run even. If Kentucky got to stop, Tennessee got to stop. If Kentucky scored, Tennessee scored. But then to me, the big sequence with 8:42 left in the game, Tennessee up by 12 in this moment. Felix Okpara put back dunk on Chaz Lanier missed layup. Lanier went to the ground on the attempt. Got back up, stole the inbound pass, found Zakai Ziegler. Ziegler knocked down a three. So a 5-0 run to push the lead back to 17 points. And that was a 5-second stretch. That's kind of over would be a little bit dramatic, but once that happened, it felt like Kentucky was just about completely dead.
Yeah, that sequence was monster. The fans in the stadium knew it. The fans watching at home knew it. Everybody knew that was a huge differentiating moment for Tennessee. I want to go back to what you were talking about, though, with the second half. It felt like Tennessee sort of punched Kentucky in the mouth in the first half, got them a little bit off balance, carried that lead into halftime. But then to me, I saw a better Kentucky team, at least a Kentucky team that was a little bit more in rhythm to start out the second half. But meanwhile, Tennessee just kept matching, just kept answering. So to your point, there really wasn't a chance for Kentucky to go on a big run, because even when they would score, and they were scoring pretty frequently in there in those first couple minutes or so, Tennessee had that answer. It was 6-6 in the second half. Then it was 10-10. Then it was 12-12. You just always kind of felt like, hey, Tennessee's got answers right now for what Kentucky's trying to do, and ultimately didn't even let them get it back to a single-digit game.
No, you're right. I think that's a perfect example of it right there. And, defensively, I think that was a big Obviously, something you highlight given the way Kentucky scored on Tennessee in both the regular season games. Tennessee, I thought, was just stout on defense in the first half, but even in the second half, not that Tennessee was bad, but Kentucky, I thought, was much better. They shot 60% from the field in the second half.
Yeah.
50% from the three-point line. But Tennessee did a good job of turning them over. And Tennessee did just a great job throughout the game on the glass. It felt like Kentucky did not get multiple opportunities many times. And Tennessee's offense was just steady throughout the game.
Yeah, it did separate out as the game went on. The final stat that I'm sort of directing towards right now is that Tennessee had 14 offensive rebounds. Kentucky had 24 rebounds in total. Again, at one point earlier in the game, even that stat was a lot closer. You could just tell that was an area that Tennessee was dominating in. And Ryan, that's something that we talked about on the preview show, that you could look at those first two matchups and say, all right, well, here's where Tennessee needed to improve. Here's where Tennessee needed to improve. But they had the rebounding advantage in both of those. You and I felt like if they could keep that into the game, here on Friday, that would give them a big chance to ultimately find the result that they did in the first two tries.
Yeah, for sure. That was the one thing you looked back on those first two games and you said, all right, Tennessee did a really good job of this. If they can, they need to be able to repeat this again and then, kind of close the gaps in some areas where they struggled in those games. And I thought Felix Okpara was a man tonight for Tennessee. I thought one of the best games of his season. 11 rebounds, 7 of them on the offensive end, stole a lot of possessions for Tennessee. Was good, getting some putbacks and scoring on him too. I think he had, Tennessee kind of came out cold offensively, which is funny given how well they played offensively.
Yeah, 2 of 8 to start the game.
2 of 8 for start. I think he had the first made field goal for Tennessee. It wasn't the first points, but the first made field goal. And I think that was on a putback too. So he was fantastic. And Tennessee's front court as a whole was. And, he was the only one that I think was fantastic in the front court for Tennessee. But Igor Milicic gave Tennessee some stuff. Darlington Dubar gave Tennessee some stuff. Cade Phillips gave Tennessee some stuff. None of those 3 guys were great. Like, I wouldn't look at any of their performance and say, like, wow, they were really good. But they were all good and all had an impact on the game. And that has certainly not been the case this year. Especially, that has not consistently been the case this year with all 4 of those guys. And hard not to be, really happy for D-Stone, too, with what he gave Tennessee and, after the year he's had both on and off the court.
No doubt about it. And a lot of that stuff has come out recently, just sort of what all he was dealing with at the beginning of the season and through the offseason. He only has 13 minutes on the court here tonight, but boy, were they an impactful 13 minutes. He goes 2 for 2 from the floor, including a 3-pointer for 5 points. But he had the 3rd highest plus-minus on the team, despite playing the least amount of minutes at 13. When he came into the game, he hit that 3. You felt like maybe it was going to be one of those kind of stretches for D-Stone, and he gave Tennessee something productive. Ultimately, Tennessee had 51 points from their trio of senior scoring guards. And that is what we've been talking about through this whole postseason run, SEC tournament and NCAA, is that those are the 3 guys that's going to get it done for Tennessee. They score 51 points, 18, 17, and 16 right in stepping stone order. Ziegler, Lanier, and then Gainey behind him. But look, that's what we've been saying is the recipe right now. They're getting to the Elite 8 with it. Those guys are playing on a different level right now. They're playing well together, but just to see the 3 of them be able to do what they can do, when those 3 guys can give you 51 points, I feel pretty good about Tennessee playing pretty much anyone in the country. Yeah,
I think today was the best of both worlds combination too. Like, those 3 guys drove the bus for Tennessee. Those 3 guys were the main offensive guys. Zakai's 18 and 10, his 3rd double-double in an NCAA tournament game. He's now tied for the most points, assists, double-doubles in the NCAA tournament and the history of the tournament with 3 of them. Chaz Lanier, I can go on a little bit of a tangent about Chaz, where tonight I felt like was the perfect illustration of how much he's gotten better, where for so much first half of SEC play, man, if he shot 1 for 6 from 3-point range, he probably wasn't going to have a good game. But he did good things for Tennessee. He scored 17 points. He got to the rim some. He hit some mid-range jumpers. We mentioned the steal and the assist. That was a huge play in the game. And just 4 rebounds, but I can remember specifically one instance in the second half, probably the first half of the second half, where Kentucky missed a shot. He was down there battling with a big for Kentucky, maybe Amari Williams. He didn't grab the rebound, but he swatted it out to a Tennessee player, and it was like, if he didn't do that, Kentucky was going to get the rebound and have an easy bucket. It just felt like he's impacting this team in a lot of different ways besides just shooting the ball from the perimeter. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously, Gainey kind of did what Gainey's been doing. 16 more points for him. But all that to say, the best of both worlds. You got that, and you got some offense production from the front court. I mean, not that the fact that any of those guys were, again, great offensively, but you get an efficient 8 points for Igor Milicic. You get an efficient 8 points for Felix Okpara. You get 5 for D-Stone Dubar, and then 2 from Cade Phillips. I mean, 23 points from those guys on, let's see if I can do some quick math here, 10 of 13 shooting from the field. Like, that's a good way to have a really good offensive game.
We're about 10 minutes into the show, Ryan, and I feel like we've just been praising and talking about so many good things. But that's just sort of the reality of how the game unfolded today. It was an incredibly impressive showing for Tennessee out there on the court tonight. And frankly, they did it in their style. They did it playing Tennessee basketball. They were effective and they were strong and physical early on into the game, setting the tone in the defensive end. Their guards carried them where they needed to be. It wasn't necessarily always pretty, but they really just did a great job of getting the job done. So it was a Tennessee type of win right here.
Yeah, no, it was. It's kind of crazy that, through 3 games, Tennessee has 3 wins and they've all been pretty comfortable. They've been leading by double digits for a good portion, at least, of the second half in all 3 of them. So, and you're right. I think, look, Kentucky still did some solid things offensively, but at the same time, 65 points, tied for the fewest all season for Kentucky with their loss to Ohio State back in December. And Tennessee, I think you saw them execute what they wanted to do defensively. They clearly wanted to run the Wildcats off the three-point line. Kentucky only attempted 15 three-pointers in this game, and I think Tennessee said, all right, whatever you get at the rim, we'll live with that. But we're not going to leave shooters, and we're really going to try to run Kentucky off the three-point line. And, the Vols did a good job of it.
Yeah, and Kentucky was missing some threes early on, which I wondered if that was sort of affecting their psyche a little bit too.
But they ended up 6 of 15. They still shot 40%.
They hit them.
Granted, some of them late when the game was all but decided.
Yeah.
But, they made their final 3. So before that, they were 3 of 12, I guess. Is what that math would be.
Now we've already been talking about Jordan Gainey. I encourage everybody, if you're watching this still show on YouTube, or if you're not watching on YouTube, head over to the YouTube and watch the Tennessee postgame press conference. I believe it's both Sakai Ziegler and Rick Barnes. They really talk about what Jordan Gainey means to this team coming off the bench. Rick Barnes sort of went into a long tangent about the whole Enom thing. This is actually something I think we talked about either last game or the game before, but how Tennessee does not participate in the introductions. They stay in a huddle, they clap a little bit, they're getting hyped, but they don't make a big deal out of it. And that is because they feel like everybody, they feel like there's not 5 starters and then bench players. It's a team. And Jordan Gainey is certainly representative of that. But when your bench can outscore the opposition's bench 23-6, that's big time. Kentucky had a couple of big performances. Lamont Butler had 18. Otega Owe had 13. And then Amari Williams had 14. But aside from that, there wasn't a ton of production from the Wildcats bench, whereas Tennessee got a big game from Jordan Gainey. We talked about it, a couple big stretches from Darlington Dubar, and then Cade Phillips made his one shot of the day too. So that is a big separating factor to me.
For sure. And look, Kobe Brea and Nathaniel Rutherford had the by the number story over at RTI where he's kind of the big guy. That's when he hits 3 or more threes, Kentucky's really, really hard to beat. He'd hit 3, I think it was exactly 3 3-pointers in both the regular season games. I thought it was telling that Jemai Meshack started the game on him. Usually, I think both the regular season games, Meshack had started on Owe, who was a better all-around scorer. But it was clear that Tennessee wanted to not let Kobe Brea get going, and they did a great job on him. 5 points, 1 of 7 shooting from the field, and on Amari Williams, it kind of felt like Tennessee kind of said, all right, we'll let him play in ISOs, and he's a good player. He scored 14 points, pretty efficient, 6 of 9 shooting from the field, but Tennessee said he won't be able to score enough to beat us. We'll live with him getting stuff, contested looks at the rim, and instead of open shots from the 3-point line.
Yes, and one thing that I did want to note as well, it's fleeting now. It's fleeting from my brain. Okay, you were just talking about Oweh. Oh, I got it.
There we go.
Imagine being one of these shooters, right? Whether you're Oweh, whether you're Kobe Brea, and you don't know who's going to guard you. You start the game, you come on offense, and then it's Jemai Meshack. And you're just like, oh my God, my night just got so much harder. I mean, not that it would be easy to have, Zakai Ziegler guard you as well, but if you're Kobe Brea and you're going through the first 60 seconds of that game and you know that Jemai Meshack has he pulled you as his assignment, your night just got a whole lot harder.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I mean, that's got to be a terrible I know these guys are competitors, more of a competitor, than in their pinky finger than I have in my body, but boy, oh boy, that's got to be a bit of a rough feeling.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't remember who tweeted it out. I can't give credit. It was a national college basketball guy, but this was a tweet during the Louisville game, Tennessee-Louisville game, so all the way back in October, or I guess early November, not October, but it was like a haunted house, but it's 10 straight isolation possessions with either Zakai Ziegler or Jemai Meshack guarding you, and yeah,
it's really good.
It's a good one.
That's a better version of what I said, so I'm glad you said it. By the way, Ryan's got a great piece out on RockyTopInsider.com, sort of breaking down the conversation between whether Jemai Meshack or Zakai Ziegler has a better claim.
Just who should win National Defense Player of the Year, or 2 out of 4 finalists for the Naismith National Defense Player of the Year.
That's pretty unbelievable. First and foremost, do you have if you had a vote?
Yeah, I'd probably go Jemai. That's the thing that's kind of hard about these Defense Player of the Year is that you can affect the game in like different ways. Zakai and Jemai obviously do. It's different things that make them such good defenders. And obviously the same would be said for Ryan Kalkbrenner for Creighton, who defends the rim. So it's tough. There's an argument to be made for both, but I'd go with Jemai.
So, again, a 78... Oh, by the way, I agree. Even though that is a pest of a defender in Zakai Ziegler. I mean, neither one's someone you want to go up against. But, yeah, I think Meshack's versatility and just his ability to guard so much of the court gives him the edge to me. And also, Zakai's got a couple SEC, trophies to his name. Well, let's share the wealth. Again, 2-seed Tennessee eliminates 3-seed Kentucky in the Sweet 16 by a score of 78-65. Because we are recording this so early in the morning on Saturday, we now know that Tennessee will play Houston, the 1 seed in the Midwest region, coming up on Saturday in the Elite Eight. Ryan, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of coverage over the weekend leading into that game to get the people ready for it, but just any kind of maybe initial thoughts on Kelvin Sampson's squad, a very, very good team, one that has not cracked through to the Elite Eight in a couple years, in a couple tries, but they were able to with basically a last-second shot against Purdue, 2.8 seconds left on the floor. Houston gets the go-ahead, make in the paint to go. So that'll be Tennessee's opponent, Rick Barnes versus Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, so I guess a couple notes here. One, Houston, they got off to a rocky start to the season. They were 4-3 in the month of November. Since then, they are 29-1. They lost one game in the Big 12 this year, winning the conference. They lost at home to Texas Tech in overtime.
So they haven't lost since that Texas Tech game.
Not since that Texas Tech game, which was
that might be forgotten how to lose.
The same the same day that Tennessee beat Florida in Knoxville, to give you some sort of reference point for how long ago that was. First day of February. So it's a really good team. It's like you expect with Kelvin Sampson. Houston teams are great defensively, currently first in the nation defensively. They play a very slow pace like Tennessee. It's going to be probably a low-scoring game naturally because of that, but a good offensive team too. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, L.J. Cryer's a stud. 3 guys on this Houston team hit a ton of threes at a really efficient rate. L.J. Cryer's made 111 this season at 42% shooting. Milos Uzan has made 61 three-pointers this season on 45% three-point shooting. And Emmanuel Sharp, which is a good name for a good shooter, has made 70... I lost where I was looking at. He's made 79 three-pointers this season on a 41% clip. So those 3 guys are elite shooters, and talk about the guards driving the bus for Tennessee offensively. It's the same thing for Houston.
Hey, by the way, I know that there's a lot of Tennessee fans who wanted that Purdue matchup, who wanted that revenge game, a little bit of a revenge tour, if you will. But Tennessee will have the home court advantage coming up on Sunday. Even though it might not be packed as it was for the 2 games tonight, they will have the home court advantages. I'd say Houston had the fewest
By
far fans in the crowd today.
Probably say Purdue, Kentucky,
Yes.
Gap, Tennessee, another Gap, Houston.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. So you're not dealing with an away crowd with Purdue necessarily. Maybe some of their fans stick around and try to cheer against Tennessee. I don't know, but certainly Tennessee will have the home numbers. At least I would assume for that game coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I would.
It could have been a huge away court.
Yeah, I would still take it if I was Tennessee because I think Houston's a lot better than Purdue.
I would too.
But you're right. That's maybe a little bit of solace, I guess. Well, I think this is the last thing I have. But Rick Barnes spent 17 years as the head coach at Texas. Kelvin Sampson, 12 years as the head coach at Oklahoma. 8 years overlapping. They played 20 times in those 8 years. Oklahoma won 12. Texas won 8. So a lot of history between these two.
That's good stuff.
Both North Carolina natives. Both played, I believe, in the same conference at around the same time. Kelvin Sampson's got to be a little bit younger. Than Rick Barnes, I think. But they're both from North Carolina. They go way back. I remember Rick Barnes talking after a press conference this season about how he knew Kelvin Sampson from the time they were both very young because they grew up in the same area.
He is a year
younger.
And a couple months younger.
Yeah, so no, they would have probably played at the same time. I think Kelvin Sampson played at High Point back when High Point was like a D3. Obviously, they were all the way like a 13 seed in the NCAA tournament this year, so they've really worked their way up. But I believe that's where Kelvin Sampson played at the same time Rick Barnes played at Lenore Ryan. Is that where Rick Barnes played at? Why am I blanking on this?
Yeah,
Lenore Ryan.
Yeah.
So both those schools in North Carolina, and I think they were in the same conference at the same time. So 2 coaches to go a long way back, both in the same area growing up, and as coaches who faced off against each other in the Big 12 for a number of years.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Again, 2-seed Tennessee advances to the Elite 8 to play 1-seed Houston with a 78-65 win over Kentucky right here in Indianapolis, Indiana, in Lucas Oil Stadium. We will have tons of coverage for you on Saturday as we go back to the stadium for Media Day to talk to both teams. We will have previews, storylines. We'll have everything that you need to know heading into this critical Elite 8 game coming up on Sunday. Go ahead.
Pembroke State is where Kelvin Sampson played, not High Point, and it is at Colmore Photo.
Nice.
So go check.
Way to get the plug
Go check
back in.
out our guy. Great photos.
Go check out our guy. He's fantastic. Really, really talented at what he does. But man, we're excited to get things back going tomorrow as Ryan and I get to stay in Indianapolis a little bit longer to see if we can make that trip to San Antonio next weekend for the Final Four, but we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves until then. This was a huge night for the Tennessee fan base and the Tennessee program, obviously, but we're talking to the fans right now. Just a game that you could tell that there was a lot of anxiety amongst the fans heading into it this week. I'm sure there was on both sides, but we saw the Tennessee side. And Tennessee's had plenty of big losses to Kentucky over the years. Kentucky's had plenty more runs to the Final Four than Tennessee has had. But to get this win tonight, I think that was just a big moment for this Tennessee basketball program. Really kind of puts a nice little stamp, a rivalry stamp on what's been a great season for the Vols so far. And again, just one that I'm sure Tennessee fans back in Knoxville and around the state are certainly soaking in here on this Friday night and Saturday morning. It's going to wrap it up for us. Let's go ahead and get this thing over with. Thank you very much for listening to the program today. You can follow Ryan at rshump00. You can follow me at Rick_Butler. Otherwise, make sure you're checking out RockyTopInsider.com throughout the weekend as we bring you the latest in the route to the Elite 8 coming up. Thank you very much for listening. Boy, it's late. We'll see you back for the next one.